Yes, we've been expecting you.
So, you want to play Morrowind, the weird test game, the one with the giant insects, the ash-covered landscapes, and the combat that feels just a touch different than what you may be used to. You're about to step into one of the most ambitious RPGs ever made. It was groundbreaking in 2002, and with the right mindset, it still offers an experience like no other today. But Morrowind is also a game of its time. It's slower, more methodical, and less guided than modern RPGs. Especially if you're coming from Skyrim or Oblivion, adjusting can take time. That's why this video exists, to guide you through your first steps into Vvardenfell. We'll walk through character creation, early tips for survival, and the best ways to get your adventure started. This guide is mostly aimed at newcomers, but I encourage the veterans among you to stick around and watch as well, because maybe you'll be able to teach me something that I missed. Now, for your first playthrough, assuming you're playing on PC, I recommend using OpenMW. It's a fan-made engine that makes the game more stable and more compatible with modern systems. Doesn't change the gameplay, it just makes the experience smoother. As for mods, try to keep it very minimal on your first playthrough. The only one I'd suggest right away is the expansion delay mod, so that DLC content doesn't interfere with your early game. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. Your journey begins on a prison boat, where just like every other mainline game, excluding Daggerfall, your character is a prisoner. A voice calls to you from a dream, and you're awakened by a Dunmer named Jube. He asks your name, and just like that, your character is born. Once you step off the boat, you'll be asked to choose a race. Each race comes with strengths and different skills. If you're not sure what to pick, here's a quick overview. If you're thinking about playing a warrior, Redguards, Orcs, and Nords are great picks. For thieves, Khajiit or Wood Elf. Mages, a Breton or High Elf. If you're thinking more hybrid, a Dunmer, Argonian, or Imperial would be a good choice. Ultimately, choose the one that fits your idea of the character that you want to roleplay. You can customize the rest soon, or change your mind in just a bit. Inside the Census and Excise office, you'll choose your class. You can select from a preset list, answer questions, or build your own from scratch. I highly recommend making your own. This lets you fully control your character's strengths and progression. You'll start by naming your class, then selecting a specialization, combat, magic, or stealth. This will give a 5+ bonus to all the skills in that category and make them level up faster. Now, combat is great for beginners. You click on things to damage them, hit them, they fall down. Magic is where it gets complex. However, the payoff is great, super powerful endgame. Stealth in Morrowind, well, for those of you who have stuck around with my channel, you know I'm not a big fan of it. That's just because it's incredibly finicky, very tricky, but just like with magic, in the endgame, it's also quite rewarding. Now, after you've chosen your specialization, you'll be asked to pick 2 favorite attributes. But before we pick our 2 attributes, we need to talk about what attributes are. Attributes represent your character's core capabilities, the fundamental qualities that affect everything else. Think of them as your character's physical and mental foundations. Skills are the things you train, but attributes are the raw stats that determine how effective those skills are. For example, 2 characters might have the same skill in Longblade, but if one has higher strength, they'll do more damage with every swing. And if one has higher agility, they'll hit more often and avoid getting hit more often. So, here's a breakdown of what each attribute does. Strength affects how much damage you do with melee weapons, how much you can carry, and contributes to your total fatigue. And it also partially affects your starting health. Intelligence determines your maximum magical pool, and it also improves your alchemy and enchanting chances. Willpower influences your resistance to magical effects and your chance to successfully cast spells. This one also adds to your maximum fatigue. Agility affects your chance to hit with weapons, avoid attacks, resist knockdowns, and to remain undetected while you're sneaking. This one also contributes to fatigue. Now, speed, plain and simple, just affects how fast your character moves, whether they're running, walking, or swimming. However, it does not affect attack speed, just movement speed. Endurance. This one's one of the most important attributes. It determines your starting health and how much health you gain when you level up. This one also affects your fatigue, but it also affects how quickly you regain it. Personality affects how NPCs react to you, which is pretty important when it comes to bartering, persuasion, or just general dialogue. Now luck, this one's unique. It slightly influences everything, but doesn't control any one thing directly. Now, the 2 attributes that you pick as your favorite ones will each get a +10 bonus right away. Choose based on the kind of character that you're building. For example, a warrior will choose endurance and then either strength or agility, depending on whether they want to do a heavy hitter or a nimble fighter. A mage will almost always go intelligence and willpower, giving them greater magicka pools with which to cast spells and a greater chance of casting those spells. A thief will typically go agility and speed, or maybe even sometimes luck. Now these bonuses might not seem huge at first, but in Morrowind, every point matters. They'll shape how your character performs, especially in the early game. You'll then be asked to pick 5 major skills and 5 minor skills. These are the skills that define your character and affect how you level up. The 5 major skills that you pick will gain a +25 modifier to them, and the 5 minor skills will each get a +10 modifier. So pick the ones that you want to focus on the most. After this, you'll be asked to pick a birth sign. These all give unique bonuses, so we'll go through all 13. The warrior grants a +10 to attack. This is basically just a flat boost to your chance to hit, which is really helpful in the early game when misses are the most frequent. However, it tends to fall off pretty quick by the mid-game. The mage. It increases your max magicka by 50%. There's no downside to this one. It's just a straight boost to your spellcasting potential. It's a very safe and reliable pick for any mage character. Next up we have the thief. This one adds a +10 to sanctuary, which is basically passive evasion. It makes you harder to hit. It tends to not be as noticeable in the early game as the warrior's bonus to attack, but in my opinion, it stays useful the entire way through the game, which makes it a solid pick for light armored or stealthy builds. Next up is the lady, +25 endurance and +25 personality. This is my personal favorite, and it is a fantastic choice for beginners, especially warriors. The endurance boost means more starting health and better health growth over time, while the personality makes early conversations and bartering even easier. The steed, +25 speed, and that's it. But that's not nothing. Morrowind's movement is slow, especially if you're playing a heavy armor character. So if you're someone who values less time walking, this can certainly make that time more enjoyable. The lover, +25 agility and a once-a-day paralyze spell. It's good for characters who rely on dodging and accuracy. The paralyze spell can be a lifesaver in tough fights, though using it requires some planning. The Lord. It gives you a moderate self-healing spell, but at the cost of 100% weakness to fire. This is risky, as many enemies in Vvardenfell, including most of Dunmer mages and creatures, use fire spells. I would recommend avoiding this sign entirely. The Apprentice, +150% maximum magicka, but at the cost of a 50% weakness to all magic. Now that's a big trade-off. However, if you're playing a Breton, their natural resistance will soften that blow. For High Elves though, this will make you into a glass cannon, incredibly powerful but fragile. The Atronach, +200% maximum magicka and 50% spell absorption. However, you cannot naturally regenerate your magicka. This is probably the most high skill birth sign, reserved only for experienced players or those committed to using alchemy or enchanted items to manage their magicka recovery. This can be extremely powerful with the right strategy. The Ritual grants a high-level healing spell and the ability to turn undead, which means to repulse them, not to turn something undead. This is good for roleplay or priestly characters, and handy in a few dungeons. It's not as efficient as other signs for the raw stats, but it can be serviceable for a support-focused build. Then we have the Shadow, a once-a-day invisibility for 60 seconds. Now this sounds cool, but in practice, it's hard to use effectively. Invisibility will break when you interact with anything, so it's best used for positioning or avoiding a specific encounter, not for long-term stealth. The Tower lets you detect creatures and open a 50-point lock once a day. This can be useful early on for exploring ruins and unlocking loot, especially for those non-thieves. However, it will quickly lose relevance later on if you have a decent security skill or just spells. Lastly, the Serpent gives a once-a-day poison spell that damages both the enemy and you. While thematically interesting, it's hard to justify over the more consistent and beneficial options. Each birth sign supports different styles of play. Choose the one that complements your build or the story that you are trying to tell. Once you've confirmed your choices, you will be presented with your character's stats. Take a moment to review everything. This is your final opportunity to make changes before the game begins. We'll quickly go over the stat bars. Red, health. If it hits 0, you die. Next up is blue, magicka. You use this to cast spells. Green, fatigue. If you've played Skyrim, it's basically stamina. However, in Morrowind, fatigue is way more important. It affects almost everything you do in this game. It can be easy to overlook, but it's critically important. Fatigue affects your ability to hit enemies, to successfully cast spells, and even to persuade others. If it's low, take a break. Walking, resting, or using spells can restore your fatigue. Now, if you're still feeling unsure about what to do for your first build, here's 3 starter builds that work pretty well. As we go through these, feel free to make slight adjustments or even big ones if you feel like you'd like to experiment some. Alright, first one, a warrior build. For our race, we're going to go red card. Now, this is a pretty stereotypical choice for a warrior build in Morrowind, but it's that way for a reason. They're just that good. If you want, you can play an orc or a nord. They are both good for their own reasons. However, we are choosing Redguard specifically for their adrenaline rush ability. When we get to our class customization, we will obviously choose combat specialization. When we get to favored attributes, we will be choosing endurance and strength. However, if you'd like to, you can choose agility. This build will be a heavy armor, claymore-wielding warrior. So we are focusing on consistent, heavy hits. When we get to major skills, this is what I would recommend. Long blade, athletics, acrobatics, heavy armor, security. Now, if you feel like, you can switch heavy armor for medium armor, as it is the Chad's choice. If you're wondering why I chose security for a major skill, I've chosen it as, in this game, you kind of need either a security skill or alteration skill to get through the chests in this game, and we've chosen to go the security route. For our minor skills, we'll be going Armorer, Speechcraft, Mercantile, Mysticism, and Restoration. Now, a few of those probably stand out to you. Mysticism, that's a pretty weird choice, but I've chosen it specifically because there are a lot of mid-game utility spells, notably Mark and Recall, that are in this school that I would like our character to be able to cast. And I've chosen Restoration, even though our character won't start with the base restoration spells, I would still like them to be able to cast them. For the birth sign, we will be going, obviously, with my personal favorite, the Lady. This will give us 25 endurance, which is 25 extra starting health and an extra 2.5 health every level. Here's what your finished character should look like when you get to the stat screen. Like I said, feel free to make adjustments. This is just a template.
Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't.
Next up, the Mage build. Now, for a beginner, if this truly is your first time playing, I would recommend Breton. However, if you have a little bit more experience under your belt, High Elf would be a pretty good choice. And you're not really going to reach the heights of magical capabilities in Morrowind without exploits unless you play a High Elf. For our specialization, we will obviously go with Magic. And favorite attributes, Intelligence and Willpower. For our major skills, we're going to go Destruction, Restoration, Mysticism, Alteration, and Illusion. Our minor skills, Conjuration, Alchemy, Enchant, Unarmored, and Blunt. If you feel a little nervous that maybe you're going to be too squishy, it's entirely possible you will be. So feel free to change out Unarmored for Light. But personally, I think Unarmored, you got to commit to the Mage lifestyle. Now for birth sign, once again, if you're a beginner and this is your first time playing, and you're playing a Breton, Apprentice will actually still be pretty solid because the bonuses of Breton counteract the negatives of Apprentice. However, if you're still feeling nervous, you can still pick Mage. However, if you're a beginner that chose High Elf just to be, crazy, feel free to choose Apprentice again to double down on your craziness. I would not recommend Atronach for a first-time Mage player's birth sign. Here's what your finished character should look like when you get to the stat screen. For our stealth build, we're going to be going with a Wood Elf, and we're going to be focusing him more into like a ranger. So specialization, stealth, and favorite attributes, agility and speed. For our major skills, we're going Marksman, Light Armor, Security, Sneak, and Acrobatics. Our minor skills, Short Blade, Mercantile, Speechcraft, Athletics, and Illusion. Illusion's a weird one, I get it. But you can cast Chameleon spells, you can cast Paralyze spells. There are a few utility spells that I think are worth keeping Illusion for. And Birth Sign, might as well commit, choose Thief. Here's what your finished character should look like when you get to the stat screen. Before we move on, let's talk about one of Morrowind's most infamous mechanics, combat. Or more specifically, why you seem to miss your target so often. Morrowind uses a mix of an action combat system and a dice roll-based system. When you swing a weapon, it doesn't automatically hit just because you connected visually. Instead, the game rolls behind the scenes to determine if you hit or miss based on a combination, amongst other things, skill level, your fatigue, your weapon type, and the enemy stats. Here's a basic understanding of how it works. First, your weapon skill, like long blade or axe, determines your chance to hit. Your agility and luck can also factor into this. Then, the game looks at your fatigue bar, whether it's above 50% or below 50%, and how far above or below this line will play a role. Next, the game calculates if you're under the effect of any fortify attack effects or blind effects. It's important to note that due to a glitch in the base game, blindness will actually increase your hit rate when in fact it should decrease it. OpenMW fixes this. Then, the game looks at the enemy's evasion chance, and also their luck. Looking at you, Gaynor. So, the game takes all of these factors into consideration, and only then will it determine if you've hit or miss. Now, unfortunately, the game doesn't tell you why you hit or miss, it just gives you a hit or miss. So, you kind of have to figure it out on your own, but that's part of the charm. Now, in the early game, you're going to miss a lot, and that's normal. But as your skill improves, so will your hit rate. It's also worth knowing that Morrowind has directional attacks. You can swing from left, right, thrust forward, or do an overhead chop. Different weapons deal different amounts of damage depending on the direction you attack from. For example, spears do best when thrusting, while axes often do better with wide swings. The way to change the direction you're attacking from, sort of counterintuitively, is not to swing your mouse side to side like it is in games like Mount and Blade. Instead, your physical character has to move. So if you want to do a chop, which is the downwards attack, you need to stand still. If you want to do the sideways attack, you need to physically move your character side to side. If you want to thrust, like make a stabbing attack, you need to move your character either forwards or backwards. It takes some getting used to. However, if you do not like this system, there is an inbuilt off switch to the system. You go into the settings and hit this setting right here where it says always use best attack. Although just know, I will judge you for it. And there's one more detail a lot of new players miss. Weapons have damage ranges, like 1 through 20 or 4 through 10. This range is tied to how long you hold down the attack button. It is not purely random. If you tap it quickly, you'll pretty consistently deal the minimum damage. If you hold it down for a second or two, you'll typically land on the higher end of the damage range. This damage range is not stamina-based like the power attacks of Oblivion and Skyrim. It's purely about how long you've held down your attack. Which is why if you've ever seen experienced Morrowind players play the game, you will see that they do not spam their attacks. So, if you're wondering why your hits are inconsistent, it's probably a mix of low skill, low fatigue, and quick attacks. Give it time. As your stats go up, your swings will start connecting more often, and when they do, they'll hit a lot harder. Now that you've got a character built, and you understand the basics of combat, let's get through the Census and Excise office and out into the world. First, grab your documents from the table on the right. This will allow you to open and close your inventory at will. Now, if you feel like making some gold in a pretty cheesy way, immediately beeline it to the shelves by the fireplace and find the limeware platter. Pick it up, and their guards will start yelling at you, calling you a thief. Before they get to you, you need to quickly open your inventory and drop it. The guards will come and scold you and walk away, allowing you to pick it up off the floor without getting in trouble anymore. Don't know why this works? It just does. Todd Howard.
It just works.
After this, walk through the door that the guard is standing next to. Don't forget to search the room to your right. There's a bit of food, some drinkable flin, and silverware that you can sell. Don't forget to grab the lockpick on the table and pick the chest on the shelves before you leave. It is at this point that I need to mention that lockpicking in Morrowind is also a dice roll based off your character's stats. It does not look like this, and by Vec, it certainly doesn't look like this. Once you're done looting, head outside. You'll see a barrel to your left. Inside it is the engraved Ring of Healing. Take it. It's a magical item that will restore health, and it will come in handy, but not for its magical purposes. Then enter the next building and meet Salus Gravius. He'll give you your first main quest, to deliver a package to a man named Caius Casades in Balmora. You are now officially done with the tutorial. However, we will get you through the first town. Before you rush off to Balmora, take a little time to explore Seyda Neen. It is small, but there are a few useful things that you can do here before you leave. Right as you leave the office, you'll meet Fargoth. He claims the guards stole his ring. It just so happens to be the engraved Ring of Healing that you found earlier. Giving it to him will boost your disposition with the locals, especially the nearby trader, Aril. We're going to head into Aril's trade house next. Sell any of the loot you collected so far, and buy supplies that suit the build that you've created. If you're a warrior, get a better weapon. If you're a mage, buy a spell. I recommend getting Frostbite, because the starting destruction spell Firebite, while good, will actually do a little bit less damage than you might think, because most of the humanoid enemies in this game are Dark Elves, and they have a resistance to fire, so you will need a Frost spell to use against the Dark Elves that you fight. Before you leave, there are a few small quests around the town that are worth doing, such as find the missing tax collector, Processus Vitalius. This leads to a simple investigation that's worth a bit of gold. You can look for Tariel, who will plummet from the sky not too far outside of town. He'll carry scrolls of Icarian flight and an enchanted sword. At night, you can even rob Fargoth if you're feeling devious, and this will get you the ring back. There's plenty of ways to get to Balmora. Look at this map as an example and pick your team. You could walk, but early on, it's safer and easier to use a Silt Strider. These giant insect taxis are stationed outside Seyda Neen. Pay a small fee and they'll take you across the region. Fast travel in Morrowind works a bit differently than in the newer Elder Scrolls games. You don't just click on the map. Instead, you use a few systems that you'll learn to combine as you play. First, Silt Striders, which will give you overland travel from city to city. Then there's boats, which are like Silt Striders, but for the coastal towns only. Then you'll have guild guides, which are teleportation sites that only take you between mages' guild halls. Then intervention spells, which will teleport you to either the nearest tribunal temple or imperial cult shrine. Then my personal favorite, Mark and Recall, 2 linked spells, where you cast Mark first, and that sets your, think of it like a home location, and then you can cast Recall, and it'll take you back to wherever you cast Mark. Then Propylon Chambers, which are probably the least useful, but they're still pretty cool. Around Vvardenfell, there's like a link, a circle of ancient Dunmer forts, and if you have the required keys called indexes, you can teleport around the circle. Once we've taken the Silt Strider to Balmora, we're going to follow directions that we were given from Salus Gravius. We're looking for a place called the South Wall Corner Club. Once we've found the South Wall Corner Club, we're going to ask about Caius Casades. Once we've asked about Caius Casades in the South Wall Corner Club, you'll be told where he lives, up north near the eastern riverbank. When you find him, Caius accepts the package and inducts you into the Blades, the Empire's intelligence network. He'll give you 200 gold and tell you to go gain some experience. You are now free to explore, take side quests, and come back when you're ready. At this point, I recommend you join a faction. The 3 most obvious and easily accessible are the Fighters Guild, which are for warriors. They'll offer equipment, reliable quests, and combat training. The Mages Guild, which will give you access to custom spells, enchanting, as well as opportunities to just learn about the world. You also have the Thieves Guild, which is based in the South Wall Corner Club, which will give you access to trainers and bounty clearing, because in Morrowind, a bounty over 5,000 cannot be paid off. You have to clear it at a Thieves Guild. Later in the game, you may want to consider joining a great house, such as Redoran, Telvanni, or Hlalu. Maybe even joining a religious order, like the Tribunal Temple, or the Imperial Cults, or technically the Morag Tong, even though they're sort of a assassin guild as well. You could even join the Imperial Legion while you're at it. Now, when it comes to the guilds, I recommend you join at least one of them early. They offer not just gear and gold, but unique quests and insights that will reveal more of Vvardenfell's world. Last thing before we finish up, we need to cover how leveling works in Morrowind, because it's a bit complicated. Although if you've played Oblivion, it's pretty similar, because Oblivion took its DNA from Morrowind. Leveling in Morrowind is skill-based. To gain a level, you must improve any combination of either your major or minor skills 10 times. So it could be 10 majors and 0 minors, 7 majors, 3 minors, you get the point. Once you've done that, you'll see a message saying, you should rest and meditate on what you've learned. You can find a bed or rest in the wilderness. Either way, when you sleep, the level up screen will appear. You'll then be asked to choose 3 of your attributes to increase. You'll even notice that some of them will have multipliers, such as ×2, ×3, ×4, or even the maximum ×5. These multipliers are based on the skills that you've trained since your last level up. For example, training Longblade will also boost your strength. If you train enough strength-related skills, you'll get a higher multiplier at the next level up. Now, important to remember, luck can always be raised by 1 point, and it will never have a multiplier. Second thing, multipliers do not carry over, so if you have a ×5 on strength this level up, and you do not pick strength, next time you level up, that multiplier will not be there unless you re-earned a ×5 on that level up. I don't want you to freak out and think you have to power level. Trust me, Morrowind is not as hard as some people like to make it out to be, but if you want to, the option's there. I do not recommend you do it though. Alright, few quick tips before we go. Do not worry if you miss a quest or fail the few persuasion checks that exist in this game. Morrowind is built around failure as well as success, and most of the time you can just take a different path. Use your restoration spells and potions often. Health, fatigue, and cures especially are vital. Don't carry too much. Overincumbence doesn't just drain your fatigue faster, it will also slow you down. In addition, a lot of players aren't actually aware that they can hotkey their favorite spells and weapons. Just press F1 and that'll bring up the hotkey menu, and that'll give you 9 slots to work around with. And most importantly, save often. I recommend hotkeying quick save and quick load. I quick save all the time, because you never know. Finally, if you're ever lost, the UESP, unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, so great. Every time I make one of my videos, I'm always on the UESP. Morrowind isn't just a game. It's a world, one filled with layered histories, hidden secrets, and systems that invite you to learn. Rather than hand you everything, it rewards curiosity, it encourages roleplay, it invites you to slow down, listen, and observe. And while it may be difficult at first, the moment it clicks, the moment you find your place in Vvardenfell, is something truly special. This guide has been a long time coming. I think I've been workshopping it since maybe February. I've just been trying to find a way to share this game with others in a way that makes it at least appear more accessible while trying to preserve the core identity. So if this helped you, please like and subscribe. And while you're down there, share your first Morrowind experience in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. Take care. Morro out.